Okay, dear students, now in this video we will discuss what is law of supply. Okay, so by law of supply we mean that other things remaining constant, the quantity of goods that producers offer more quantity of goods with rise in price and offers less quantity with decrease in price. Okay, so that quantity of goods uh, will be provided more when the price is more. Okay, and will provide less when the price is less. Okay, so there is kind of a direct relationship between the goods that is supplied and the price of that good. Okay, so it is very simple. The more the price, the more the supply. Okay, the less the price, the less the supply. Okay, now supply schedule. Now supply schedule is actually a tabular statement showing various possible quantities which producers are willing to produce and sell at different price conditions during a period of time. Okay, so generally whenever you think about supply schedule, you are actually referring to individual supply schedule. Okay, in which you will only show the schedule of a single firm. Okay, this supply schedule of a single firm. Okay, so you can see the supply schedule of a single firm. Okay, and you can see here that law of supply has been uh, applied out here. Okay, so when the price is increasing, the quantity supplied is also increasing. Okay, but when the price is decreasing, the quantity supplied is also decreasing. Okay, now this market supply is actually the supply schedule of all the firms in an economy. Okay, so now let us assume that there are two firms in an economy or in a market. Okay, so price will be constant for both of them. Okay, now this is your market supply. So that is your, I mean, the total supply made by firm A and firm B is known as the market supply. Okay, so we know in real life, okay, there can be more than two firms. Okay, like 50, 100, it can be 1,000, okay, 10,000 firms in a market. So if you total everything, then you will get the market supply. Okay, now supply curve. So after having this supply schedule, we can have supply curve. Okay, if you represent this uh, supply schedule in a graphic manner, then it will be known as supply curve. Okay, so supply curve also it can be of two types, individual supply curve and the market supply curve. Okay, so you can see it out here. So this is your individual supply curve and this is your market supply curve. Okay, you can see it out here. This is the supply of firm A and this is the supply of firm B. Now if you combine these two, you will get a market supply curve. Okay, now it will be better if you uh, try to understand this supply curve, I mean the market supply curve, through this table. Okay, through this table, the market supply schedule. Okay, uh, in this firm A, you will just refer to this part. Okay, firm A, for firm A, and for firm B, you will refer to the supply schedule. Okay, where the prices are constant. Okay, and ultimately, when you make a market supply curve, you will be referring to this figures. Okay, so try to make a supply curve on your own. Okay, and try to see it out here. First, make the supply curve of this firm A and then firm B, and ultimately you can make a market supply. Okay, now let's explain the law of supply. Level of price determines the level of profit. Obviously, the more the price, the more the margin of profit. Okay, the less the price, the less the margin of profit. Okay, it's very simple. Now, a positive slope of supply curve is because of rise in marginal cost of production. Okay, uh, this marginal cost of production we will discuss in later chapters. Okay, but if you want to know it now, please let me know. Okay. So point number three. Now, a rise in price would give incentive not only to the existing producers to produce larger quantity of a commodity, but would also motivate the other prospective producers to produce this commodity so as to earn profit. Okay, now, so what is this? Okay, let me give you an example. Okay, now there are two firms in a market. Okay, now firm A is selling rice and firm B is selling wheat. Okay, now let's say that because of rise in price, he will also increase the supply of his commodity. Okay, from A, he will increase the supply of rice. Okay, so the more the price, the more the supply. Okay, so as we already have discussed in point number one, that more price, more level of profit. Okay, so price is increasing, so supply is also increasing, as well as his profit will also increase. And that extra earned profit will be capitalized now. Okay, so with that extra profit earned, he will again use that money to get more of, I mean, the raw material of rice. Okay, so then he will use that. So by this point, we mean this rise in price would give incentive not only to the, sorry, to the existing producers to produce larger quantity. Okay, so rise in price would give incentive to the existing producers to produce larger quantity of a commodity. Okay, but it will also motivate the other prospective producers. So now, in our example, firm B was a seller of wheat. Okay, so now he will uh, shift his product from wheat to rice. Okay, so this is what we are talking about. Okay, however, in practical sense, it doesn't apply all the time, because a cloth merchant cannot shift his product line from clothing to any kind of food items. Okay, like any garment store cannot convert itself into a restaurant immediately. So it takes time. Okay, because if in the market, if everybody is selling the same kind of product, then that market will be a monotonic market. Okay, it will be a completely perfectly competitive market, so which we will discuss afterwards. Okay, so now on the basis of supply, okay, now the time period is classified as three. Okay, number one, market period; number two, short run period; and number three, long run period. Okay, so now actually we are just trying to understand the supply curve. Okay, or your supply in three different time periods. Okay, or time lapse. Okay, market period, short run, and the long run. Now what are these actually? Now market period is a very short period, okay, in which the supply is fixed, as well as the factors of production are also fixed. Okay, in which the supply cannot be increased or decreased. Okay, and as a result, the supply curve of such kind of firm will be vertical. Okay, and this mostly happens in case of perishable goods. Okay, but I will give you an example. Let's say um, that some from okay, Basti area. Okay, any person. Okay, he may bring up his produce. Okay, vegetables and other items. So when he is bringing from Basti area to Hard Bazaar, okay, to our Hard Bazaar, then the supply of that particular firm or a seller will be fixed, because whatever the stock that he has got is only the supply, okay, in the market, isn't it? So at this point of time, whatever be the level of price, whether the price is very high or whether the price is very low, he has to sell that product only. Okay. And at this point of time, remember that factors of production are limited. Okay, he cannot increase his supply by implying or by giving more input of factors of production. Okay. Now, short run period. Now, short run period is a period in which the supply can be adjusted to a certain limit. Okay, uh, it's not free completely, but to certain extent, the supply can be manipulated. Okay, it can be adjusted. Okay, it can be increased or decreased. Okay, so now I want to give you an example of this short run. Let's say that Telawala, okay, or some restaurant, okay, uh, the output or the supply, it can be adjusted. Okay, if they want to make more of their output, then they have to work for longer hours. Okay, and if they want to decrease their output, then they will work for only short period of time. Okay, but remember, here the factors of production are again is constant, which means that he cannot, I mean the seller, he cannot install a new machine, okay, he cannot invest extra capital in the business, okay, he cannot increase the labor size, okay, everything will remain constant, okay. So if we see closely between this market period and the short run period, there is a similarity out here. What is that similarity? That factors of production in both the cases are constant, okay, they are fixed. In market period as well as short run period, the factors of production are constant. But the difference here is, in market period the supply is fixed, it is constant, whereas in case of short run the supply can be adjusted to certain extent, okay. Now let's talk about long run period. Now in the long run, supply can be adjusted to a larger extent. Why? Because factors of production can also be adjusted. So the long run period examples, it can be like, it can go beyond 1 year, okay, like 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. So factors of production can be uh, changed, okay, and this can bring about a larger change in the quantity that is supplied in the market, okay. So now if you see the slope out here, okay, let's have a look at this very closely. Now this blue line is actually referring to the market period supply, okay, this one, which is vertical, okay, as you can see it out here in the previous picture I have shown you out here, okay. So this is your market period supply curve, okay. But now you can see this slope out here if you compare the short run and the long run, okay. So see, this short run, it has a slope, okay, but if you compare to this long run, the slope is quite flat, okay, as compared to the short run. So let's have a look at this only. So this red line is actually referring to the short run supply curve, and this green line is actually referring to the long run supply curve, okay. So now if you um, refer to the x-axis, okay, the supply curve of long run will be closer to the x-axis as compared to the supply curve of short run period, okay. Again I want to repeat, this blue line is for the market period, this red line is for the short run period, and this green line is for the long run period, okay. Now what are the exceptions to the law of supply? Now the exceptions are, number one, vertical supply curve, and number two, backward sloping supply curve, okay. Now vertical supply curve, now there are certain items, okay, the antique materials, okay, of which the supply cannot be increased or decreased. So at this point of time the supply curve will be vertical, okay. Now in case of this labor supply, the back, okay, there will be a backward sloping supply curve, okay. So let me take you to this part here, okay. So initially, okay, when the wage rate is increasing, okay, initially this supply curve will go upwards, okay, it will follow, okay, it will follow to the supply, I mean the law of supply, okay. But when the wage rate is increasing, okay, when it reaches its saturation part, the supply curve will bend backwards, okay. Because here if you see out here, here there is substitution effect is more than the income effect, okay, at this point of time. So hence this, it will follow the supply, I mean the law of supply, okay. But if it starts rising upwards, then the income effect will be more than the substitution effect, so it will bend backwards, okay. uh, Here in this increasing uh, wage rate, the workers will give more effort, okay, he will work for more hours, so to earn more and more income, okay. But at a certain point of time, after reaching certain point of time, it will start bending backwards, because with higher level of wage rate, he will want to work less and less number of hours. Let me give you a very practical example. If there is a coolie wala, okay, uh, in a railway platform, okay, so he, if he is working for more and more number of hours, he will be able to earn more and more, okay, that unskilled or a physical labor, okay. So if he's working more and more, okay. But if you talk about Mukesh Ambani, do you think he works for 8 hours in a day? So in a higher wage rate, okay, this supply curve of labor, it will bend backwards. So this backward bending or backward sloping curve of supply is actually the exceptions to the law of supply. Okay. Now let's talk about the movement. Now there are two types of movement. One is expansion of supply curve, and the other one is the contraction. Okay. Now whenever you talk about the movement along the supply curve, you are actually referring to the movement but on the same supply curve. Okay. Now there are two types of movement. One is expansion, okay, which is the upward movement, and contraction, which is downward movement. Okay. Now uh, it's because of the own price. Okay, if the price increases, supply also increases. This is known as expansion. And contraction means price decreases, supply also decreases. Okay. Remember, other factors here in this movement, in this type of movement, other factors will remain constant, but price will be active. Okay, so let's assume that P1 is the initial price, okay, and Q1 is the origin, the initial quantity supplied. So with increase in price, if the price increase from P1 to P3, quantity supplied will also increase from Q1 to Q3. Okay, so here you can see that there is expansion in the supply, which means there is upward movement. Okay. Now again, if P1 and Q1 are initial price and quantity supplied respectively, then with change in price or fall in price from P1 to P2, quantity supplied will also fall from Q1 to Q2. Okay, so here you can see there is downward movement. Okay, so this is known as the contraction in supply. Again, I want to repeat, it's all because of the price of its own commodity. Okay, uh, other factors will remain inactive or constant out here. Okay, but now shift of the supply curve. Now what is shift? Shift means actually a new, there will be a new location of the supply curve. Okay, and remember, this shifting of supply curve is because of other factors. Okay, and price will remain constant out here. Okay, so this let's first talk about this change in supply. Now, when the quantity supplied of a commodity increases or decreases because of change in other factors, okay, whereas price remaining constant is known as the change in supply. Now this change are of two types, okay, increase in supply and decrease in supply. Now increase in supply, it refers to a situation when the producers are willing to supply a larger quantity of the commodity at the same price or same quantity at a lower price. Okay, so now when the suppliers are willing to supply more or larger quantity of such a commodity at the same price is known as the increase in supply. Now you can see out here. Okay, let's see. Let's see that at this point, the price is remaining constant. Okay, so now if this S1 is the initial supply curve, so then for some other reason, okay, price is constant out here. Okay, price will remain constant. You just draw a horizontal line out here. Okay, just draw a horizontal line out here. You make this in your copy. So now just draw a horizontal line out here. Price will remain constant, but this the supply curve will shift. Okay, shift towards either towards the right hand side or towards the left hand side. Okay, now for some reasons, okay, he will be supplying more commodity. Okay, and sometimes for some other reasons he may decrease the supply, and at that point of time you can see a leftward movement. So now whenever you talk about the increase in supply, it's actually a rightward movement. Okay, but the decrease in supply is actually the leftward movement. Okay, and it may happen because of other factors. Remember, price is constant. Okay, other factors, it can be like social factors, political factors. Okay, it can be like other economic factors. Okay, and some geopolitical factors or because of some natural calamities, okay, or because of some emergency, okay, national emergency. So other factors will affect your shift in supply, okay. So I want to repeat one more time that shifting of supply is because of other factors, whereas movement of supply is because of the price of a commodity. Okay, so now the difference between the expansion of supply and increase in supply. Now expansion is because, it refers to a condition when larger quantity will be supplied at higher price. Okay, but increase in supply is because of, it means a situation when the supply will be more, okay, but at the same price. Okay, now expansion is actually because of the own price of the commodity, okay, because of the rise in the own price of a commodity, but increase in supply is because of the change in other factors. Okay, but the price will remain constant. Now it involves the upward movement, whereas it refers to the rightward movement. Okay, so here you can see expansion is upward movement, but increase in supply is towards the rightward shift. Okay, now contraction of supply and decrease in supply. Now contraction is actually because of the fall in the price of a commodity. Okay, now the price will fall, supply will also fall. Now the decrease in supply is actually because of the price will remain constant, but the quantity supplied will decrease. Okay, price will remain constant, remember. Now it is because of the fall in the price of the commodity, but it is again because of the change in factors. Okay, whereas price remains constant. Now it involves the downward movement, contraction, whereas the decrease in supply, it's actually the leftward shift of the supply curve. You can see it out here, this contraction, okay, downward movement, whereas decrease in supply is towards the, okay, left hand side. Okay, so this is the end of this video. In the next video we will discuss elasticity of demand.